Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jonathan Taylor. I'm the Technical Marketing Manager for Civil Survey Solutions, and today it's my pleasure to host the live technical webcast, Civil Site Design Points and Survey Lines. Today your presenter is Shane, who's based in Melbourne and just on the cusp of going back into lockdown. Is that right, Shane?
That's absolutely right. Yep, I'll be working from my kitchen as of tomorrow.
Great. It'll be like we've never left you after last year's webcast, where I think most of them were also run from your kitchen.
Yes.
So it's just to follow on from that, which is fantastic. Great stuff. Well, folks, just before I hand over to Shane, there's a couple of pieces of housekeeping. If you haven't attended these webinars before, we have a couple of things just to point out. First of all, that it is recorded. So if you do have to duck out early or you want to review it post this particular webcast taking place, it will be on the YouTube channel. Normally within about 24 hours, you'll be able to get hold of that on there. You will also get an email link from Zoom saying, hey, you've attended the webinar, and it will give you a link on there straight to our YouTube channel. And you can go on to the Civil Site Design playlist, and this will be the latest video that we'll have added on there. If at any point during this particular webcast you want to ask any questions, please can you avoid using the chat, as it's very difficult to log questions going in and out. The Q&A panel that you should see in front of you is the best place to submit any questions, which you are more than welcome to do all the way through this particular webcast. We'll make it as interactive as possible, so if we can break Shane at any point with some questions and detract from possibly what he's doing, then we will do that. But it's there for you to submit anything related to obviously what Shane's showing and ask anything you want. Shane, I'll hand over to you. So Shane is our technical services manager, and I've put product guru because we have our little sort of unique sort of areas of expertise, but really Shane is kind of the expert in really many of the areas of all the different products that we supply. So it's very difficult to pin him down to one particular product. So today he'll be showing you the points and the survey lines. Now, Shane, I can't remember, has this hasn't been out that long, has it? It came out in version 19?
Yeah, points did, and survey lines hit the software in V22. So
oh yeah, that wasn't that long ago, was it?
Survey lines is very fresh. Civil points has got a bit more history to it.
Yes. Well, look, I will pass the button over to you.
Thank you, Jonathan. So yeah, I don't think I'm an expert at anything. I know a little bit about everything. The rest I make up. So look, thank you all for joining this session. What I want to do is, I guess, set the scene for where civil site design points have come from and why we've added survey lines, and sort of kick off on that sort of discussion. I apologise for my audio interruption there. Just cut off. So what I want to do is sort of just lay out why we introduced civil site design points. Essentially, civil site design points behave just like a COGO point, coordinated geometry point. So something you would create in Civil 3D or something you would create for string and topo. It's a point that has a display management based on description. It holds a point number, easting, northing, elevation, a whole bunch of other fields and fields you create. Can be put into point groups, can be used to build a surface. Originally, our vision with the points was to enhance your design area. What we realized is we were creating a whole bunch of strings, which is linear features, and what we weren't doing was supporting that with individual points, which are obviously a valid part of design. So we created civil site design points initially to fill that gap. What we've also come to realize is that there's a lot of people out there who have fully coordinated survey data, so X, Y, Z of points. And what we weren't doing was providing a basic way to pull those in, build a surface, and get on with your engineering design. So the extension of those civil points was to allow you to build a terrain and get on with it. So taking nothing away from string and topo, or if you get into the Civil 3D survey database, string and topo has reduction tools to take your raw survey, let you analyze that, put in target height adjustments, fix the survey, and then go through into creating points. It also has a very wide-ranging set of fast tools to correct your survey points and build your terrain. What we wanted to do was to provide people with a quick way to take, a survey that was pretty well functional and represent it and get on the engineering design. So that's sort of where that came from. What we decided to do in the last, I think, 2 releases back was to add in what we call survey lines, which is essentially your opportunity to join the dots, find common civil site design points based on description and join them with 2D line work, 3D line work, or break lines to control our surface triangulation. So the other pickup out of that is obviously it enhances your plan because you've got some line work there to reference and work with. And obviously if you're surveying road centre line, there's a cool pickup that you can then kick off and start creating alignments from. So that's sort of what I want to go through today is what a civil site design point is, what it looks like, how to bring them in and build a surface out of that, and then how they can be used in design. So Jonathan, I'll just throw out a question back to you. Did we have some poll questions?
Yeah. So we've got a couple about, have you explored or used these 2 particular tools? So if you're happy, I can just fire these up.
Yeah, just fire them up. Look, I guess we'd like to check with the audience on, I guess, what your demand is for this functionality and what you already use. So,
yeah, so the first question is just, have you explored or used civil site design points? And resoundingly, nearly 90% of people have said no, that they haven't. So I think that one's pretty much answering itself. In fact, so much so, folks, I'll just end that particular one. I will share the results. So I don't know if you can, I think the attendees should now be able to see the results of that, but you can see a good proportion of people have not looked at them yet. Interesting though that some of you have, which is good. What we'll do is just close that particular one down, and we've just got one more, which is actually related to the survey lines, which are, as Shane's indicated, they've only just been released. So I'm expecting this one to be a resounding no as well, which, yes, so far, nearly all of you are saying none of you have used the survey lines. Oh, one of you has. Fantastic. So yeah, and that was to be expected. Now, Shane, if there's any other questions that we can pop into the polling that you feel would be of use, feel free, because I can pop these in during the webinar itself.
Yeah, no problems. Cool. Thank you.
But yeah, again, resounding no. I think there was one more. No, that was just those 2 for the time being.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Jonathan.
No
Thank
problem.
you, audience. It's good to have some participation, make sure everybody's still awake. Okay, so just moving on with this PowerPoint, I've just got one more slide to show, and then I'll get in and sort of show you the toolkit. In terms of importing survey data, the process for doing it in Civil Site Design is similar to what you would do in other software. You have a point file, which is coordinated geometry with normally potentially a point number, but an easting and northing, usually elevation, usually description. You may have other fields. We have a tool to import those points, and you basically tell the software how you want to configure or read in the information. Nothing unusual if you've imported points into Civil 3D or Stringer Topo even. It has the same sort of setup. When the points come in, they'll represent on different layers. They can have different symbology, and I'll talk to you briefly about how that works. Essentially what we're doing is letting you create blocks of your own choosing. They have attributed text, and then we're just setting up a mechanism to inhabit that attributed text with real properties of a point. Once you've got your points in, if you're looking at building existing terrain data, the thing that's missing really are the break lines and the line work. So the next part of that puzzle is to then create survey lines. What this will do is to look at the codes, and there's obviously a code set for you to choose what you want to do based on the description, and then it goes through and makes those connections for you. So there's a little bit in there to talk about with survey lines on how you can sort of configure, rearrange the line work if it doesn't work, get rid of overlaps and that sort of thing. Coming out of that, the survey lines, when you make them 2D polyline, 3D polyline, and breakline, right? So the other part of the equation is you decide that this is a linear feature that you want to include in your terrain. So that's sort of what happens in a survey sort of framework to build an existing surface. When it comes to design, the reality is the same sort of rules can apply. Civil site design points can be referenced to your design elements. So you can actually link elevation information to a road centre line or a daylight batter in code. You can then have that information updating as you sort of move your main design around. But then you could put that in a surface. Then you could create survey lines and add them as break lines. So I'm going to talk to you on two fronts. One is how would you bring in a coordinated survey, quickly set it up so that you can go and design. And then I will show you sort of some of the uses of civil points from a design perspective. Okay, so today I'm working in Civil Site Design Plus, which is inbuilt with AutoCAD. The functionality you see today is exactly the same as what you would see on BricsCAD. In Civil 3D, the tools are absolutely there. They're sitting in a tab called Site. So instead of having a tab called Surface and Alignments, in Civil 3D you have a tab called Site, and you will find the same in there. I'm not sure if Jonathan wants to say something to me.
No, that wasn't me. So
wow.
not
somebody else has the power.
Someone else has joined the session. So yeah, no, that was a mistake.
Excellent. All good. Okay, so what we're going to do, we started with a blank drawing. The only thing that is actually in this drawing are some layers, and really all I wanted to do is to preset some colors. So, I mean, if you've looked at any other Cogo point import process, you have the opportunity to normally control display based on putting points on different layers based on their description. So, Civil Site Design points working exactly the same way. So all I've done here is created some layers. If layers don't exist and the software wants them, it will create them for you, but it will not give them color. They'll be white. So what you'll have is a bland looking survey, but it will create layers as it needs based on the setup. So what I'm going to do is bring in data first and then talk about I guess the infrastructure. Just in summary, with the interface here, you've got a series of commands here to create points, import from file, create individually, reference to design, and then create a grid of points. You also have a couple of edit tools. One's edit point, and the other is transform, which is good to do a helmet transformation or a fine transformation. And we do put points into groups, and within those groups, you can then publish tables, push outputs, and also create a surface. And then there are some settings here for how you might manage your own points with your own display controls and how you might want them to come in into your drawing. There's an update points command, which will run when we need. And then under survey lines, this is where you basically instruct the software to join the dots. And the survey line manager is where you would go in and sort of correct any line work you weren't happy with. There are less settings controls in survey lines, but similar to the point code set, the survey line settings is your instruction manual on which points should be connected and how. Okay, so that's sort of the summary there. So what I'm going to do is bring some stuff in and then talk about the why of how it looks. So we're going to import points from a file. When you run this command, first thing we'll do is the obvious. We'll go and find a file of points. So this is a fairly traditional file that I open with Notepad, so you can see the run of it. It is structured as point number, easting, northing, elevation, and description, all separated by commas. So what we're going to do is to grab that file. It doesn't have a heading, so we don't have to ignore that out of the file. It actually shows you what's on the first line, which gives you a bit of a feel for the framework. So the first thing to know is that when you import a file, you actually set up a file format, okay? And it's here that you basically tell it what does each column in the file represent and what is the separator in that file. So if we had more information we wanted to pick up, some attributes, we could simply add a column and then you would pick what information that column represents. Now, I don't have, well, I do have a manually created attribute here called diameter that I could fill that field. Okay, so it would then go into the point information, which I'll talk about later. But you basically get to decide your columns of information, how you want to feed that in. Okay, this format does have a dual purpose. One of the gotchas to know. You can create formats for importing data and outputting data, which is normally this sort of structure. And you can also create formats for interpreting the description of a point. So when a point gets pulled in, it has a description. That description may represent two codes of information. It may represent a code and then a rotation or a scale. So this basically lets you interpret the description and how to use that. Okay, so I've got that. I can see here the structure looks right. Point number, eastern, northern elevation description. And then when you bring the data in, you basically get to pick a default point style. So point style, which I will quickly overview here and maybe talk a bit more about later. It's saying that I'm missing some layers. That's good. A point style is how the point looks. So when you create a point style, you pick a layer for it to go on, which you can override just further down the stream. You can also decide on the block you want to use. Okay, and the block is really important because this block is your symbology and also the text that you'd like to have with the point. Now that text could be standard text, but if you create attributed text in the block, then what you can do is come down here and match the attribute with the property of the point. And this is the key ingredient here of why when you bring the points in, you get the code, the elevation, the point number, okay, if we're using the star. Okay, so that's sort of the glue that brings the point representation together. The point property list is a really interesting area where it shows you all the properties for that point. And you can see that here you can add your own properties. So if you want to bring in random attribute information to show on the plan or put in a table, you could basically call in a custom property element. And in here you fill out the information for it. We also have standard information that we understand and know about for a point. And that also can be added as information. Once you have, I guess, the property information you might want to store, again, you would then assign that to the attributes. Okay, points can have a fixed scale or scale based on the drawing. Most of the symbols in here are actually scale dependent, which is going to come from here. But you can have fixed size, and then you can, as well as having a block of information, you can also add a CAD point. This is important if you want to put those points into a surface. At the moment, you would do it by calling in a layer that contains CAD points. So you would tick that on if you wanted to separately add it to a surface. Okay, that's enough discussion about that. So the other part of the glue that brings all this together, and I did say I'd create and then talk about settings, but what I'm actually doing is walking through each of these settings commands. They're all on this central form. The code set table is the final bit that brings the pieces together, right? So what this says, and you can make your own tables, what this says is if I bring in a point with description starting with capital B, capital L, and the asterisk is anything after, I want it to go on this layer, I want it to have this particular point style, and this is the interpretation of the description. Okay, so if we have a look down at, say, tree, so we'll look down at TR, we'll see down here TR, you'll see it's a different layer, you'll see it's a different style, you'll see it's a different interpretation of the description. Okay, so you get to make these. When you start a drawing, they're local, so whatever you do here is affecting just the current drawing. But if you click on Set as Global, you can basically send them up into the settings, and that becomes your defaults from later on. You can also pull in the description key set from Civil 3D as a starting point, or a stringer SDB file could be used to just initialize this. Adding a new code is really easy. I'm going to add one. I'm going to add one called XD for Extreme Design, let's say. I go OK, that falls in the list here. And then what I can do is choose how that behaves. So I've also got, it seems I've got the station, a set out point as well. So I'll set them both up now. This is going to go onto a layer called PT Design. This one will as well. This will use a style called set out. And this one as well will use a style called set out. So you pick your style by knowing how you want it to present, right? That's textually and the marker. For the description, we're going to set them as interpreting the description as code information. Okay, so you can see how that works. Once I close, it saves it. If I go to set as global, I make this permanent in future jobs. So I won't cover off on survey lines yet. Let's work through the points. You can also apply a transformation. This comes down to a coordinate transformation. So if you're getting data in AMG, you can convert it to MGA. If it's an MGA 94, you convert it to MGA 2020. Okay, so that's what that allows you to do. You're going to go import points. Okay, so I now have point data in and a surface built. So I'll explain how that surface comes to be. This is a point, essentially when you click on it, it resonates as a block. So that block has attributes on it, and that's what we're sort of flicking through. We're inhabiting those attributes. With the point, you can move it. We'll update the surface. There is also a grip that you'll see in any AutoCAD-based platform, and you can actually go in and edit a cargo point. So it's in here that you could see the attributes, the point number, the easting, the northing, the elevation, and you can start plumbing in changes here. And once you go apply changes, you'll see that sort of resonate through the system. At this point, you could also change the style. So if the presentation style wasn't what you expected, it says it's using default PZD, you could come here and change that style. Okay, I won't worry about doing that. So that's sort of the infrastructure of the points. If you delete one using AutoCAD, you do delete it and it disappears out of the system. Now, the question to ask, once I just show you, there's an example of a tree. You can see you get different symbology based on the different codes. So what we do see, and rotation is just AutoCAD if you want to rotate your marker and text. What we do see is that there is a surface here, and this comes back to point groups. So what the point group allows you to do is to decide on how you want to collect the points together as common points. You either create a group for building a surface, or you create a group for categorization of the points. So trees might go in their own group, set out, design might go in its own group. Now, the reason why we're getting a surface here, and if I just click on it, you'll see the natural surface. We can toggle the contours and triangles on and off, water drop, all that sort of stuff. The reason that surface is being created is because within the point group, we're directing it to create a surface. Okay, so that creates a civil site design surface. You can see here the list of points. You can click on any of them and jump to them. You can edit their position and renumber them here, change the style. The reason the point group is here is because we said include all points, and then under exclude, you exclude points can be based on point number, can be based on code, elevation, coordinate, and you can actually set, a range. Okay, so number between blah and blah.
Shane.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to find an appropriate moment to jump in here. We've had a couple of questions actually asking whether or not we can share the point group. And I guess this is really, you're technically sharing the points because the group is just a holder, but share that group to Civil 3D.
No, there is no passage to use this to create a point group in Civil 3D or inherit those settings from Civil 3D.
Right.
This is a separate approach.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, if you wanted to exclude individual points, and I don't really want these control points in the surface, I can just go select points. I do a window around these guys, a window around this one, press enter, and what it does, it thumbs in each of those points as being excluded. Once I update, I'll then only be building with those points. If you ever create a point group yourself for categorization or set out, you want basically in a table, the table creation is right here. So you can click this and dump a table in AutoCAD or in drawing. You can use this to push it out to file, and this is the format method. So you pick the format of the information you want in the table or information you want to go out to file. You'll see here that there is a set out here for anything with a description of SO, and they're going to go into a sort of design group. Okay, I'm not building a surface out of them, but what I might do is decide that I also want anything with that new code that I made called XD. Maybe I want those in this group as well. Okay, so when I create a point with description XD, it's going to fall into this group from which I could then publish output tables or otherwise use. You can create surfaces directly from a point group. It's sort of a back end into the surface manager. Otherwise, if you wanted to cherry pick the points to be made into a surface just by picking, you're best to create a CAD point using the point style. So if we have a think about point styles, which I did open, the SO point style is also going to create a CAD point, and that we can basically build into a surface. And I'll show you that when we sort of do design. Okay, so one of the problems with this arrangement here is that the control points are assumed. So if you look at the coordinate tracker down the bottom, you know, I'm hovering around 1,000. There is a control point file where I know, say point number 1001, I know what the real coordinates for that point should be. So what I want to do is do a transformation based on that. So if I drop down into transform points, and this was recently added in version 22, what I do is I pick the point group, which gives me a list of points to edit. And really what I want to do is say, hey, this point here, 0.6, 5, 4, 3, all the control points, they have a real easting and northing. So basically I can type in the real easting and the real northing of these points. And once I've done that for at least, I think, 3 points, I can go and do a helmet transformation using those control known coordinates and starting to shuffle the surveyor. Now, to shortcut that, I'm just going to import a file, which is basically just comma delimited, point number, easting, northing, right? That's all I really need. So I'm going to import control points. I have a file here. Okay, if I edit it with Notepad, it's popped over here, but you'll see point number, the real coordinates, the real elevation, right? So all I'm going to do is to grab that file. I then interpret the file. And what it does is just highlights those points that are actually affected. And then I click on Apply Transformation. And end result is I'll have the data all moved. Obviously, there's something behind. So those 3 points I pulled out of the point group, those control points didn't move. So you probably want to pull the control points out of the point group after you've done a transformation. Trick for young players there. But now that the data is correctly oriented, right? So if I went to satellite image and I picked a spot here, the image would turn up in the right location, right? Because I'm now geo-referenced back to control points. So that's a sort of summary on the point side of things. Let's have a look at joining the dots by creating survey lines. Now, we've got descriptions here. We've got here PB, whatever that means. We've got shed. We've got natural surface points. We've got FENC for fence. We've got DRN for drain, right? How do we want to join these points together? Because we need to add break lines the way the survey was intended. So that is controlled from the survey line settings. So in here, what you have is a very similar framework that you had for your point code set. You have a description. You decide if you want it to be a break line, a 2D line, what layer, 3D line work, what layer. Okay, so you don't have to have 3D line work in order to create a break line. All right, they're actually treated as separate things. The break line will drive the surface. 2D line work and 3D line work are otherwise useful to you, but you don't need a 3D line work to build a surface, right? The break line is a separate tick box. So if you look down here, you'll see a whole bunch of items here that I didn't want to join. You'll see here that the DRN code is going to give me 2D line work, and that's it. It's not going to go into a surface. But you basically would set up here in this. This is the standard list that we have in the software, alphanumeric. Very easy for you to create a new table, very easy for you to add new descriptions and then say what you want to do. There's a very interesting option here about how you join the strings together. We let you decide of whether you need a string number or not. So at the moment, anything that says DRN would get strung together. If I tick this box on, it would omit, not join DRN. It would look for DRN1, DRN2. It would look for basically a string number associated with that code. I'm going to close that. So all I do to bring this together is click on Create Survey Lines. And you pick your point group, you pick your table, and then once I go Create, the software then creates that line work. Now, that line work will move when the points move. It has certainly added break lines. If I click on that surface and I choose to show the triangles, you'll see that there's defined triangulation now running, along each of these features. Okay, now, everything's not perfect. You'll see that there's some things that have been joined that you might not want to join. So what we're going to do is go through and have a look at carving that stuff out. How do we sort of fix this survey up? So if you want to tidy up your survey lines, the temptation is to move these 2D polylines, but it doesn't really get you a permanent result. What you do is you open up the survey line manager. So it's in here that you would then interrogate the survey and start making some changes. So this is a window that's completely sort of resizable. Obviously, you can go on a second monitor to give you some breathing room. I'm doing everything on the one monitor. Basically, what we do in this window is directly written across to the drawing, unless we decide that we don't want a live output. So this window is an opportunity for you to look at the survey again, but with a focus on the line work. Just up the top here, you choose what information you want to show on the points. You choose how big the text is. The text does resize as you zoom in and out. So when you're this far back, it looks nested. When you get in it, it tidies up. You can choose to show or hide the survey lines. And you can also turn on the triangulation of the surface so you can see the break lines that have come into play. So how does this work? On the left is a list of the picked up survey points that have been joined together to make lines. So you click on any of those and see them. Anything that sort of self-intersects actually highlights with a different color. It's this one called PB21. When I click on that, if I sort of zoom out and have a look at it, I'll see when I roll along that there's an icon here to indicate that there is a crossing break line. So that's something I would like to resolve. As well, when you click on any line here, you can also see the way the point numbers have been joined together. Now, we don't, in the Survey Line Manager, we don't renumber the points, but you can choose to join them in whatever order you want. Okay, so instead of renumbering all the points, what happens is the survey line point number order gets switched around. You can actually do that manually. You could manually reorder those points by using these up-down arrows. Very slow way to do it, but you certainly could. Okay, so let's start fixing up survey. So I'll start here. Classic issue. We have a look at this survey line. When you click on it, it shows that it self-intersects. Ideally, what we want to do is start at the top end here and sort of work our way down. So when you click on a survey line, we actually open up controls here for change you might want to make. And I'll just get this in the drawing so you can see it happen. So you could basically reorder this by picking point numbers, reorder distance to next, manually select, or you could use the artificial intelligence to do a solve. But all I'm going to do is go reorder distance to next. I click on the start point, and then it reorders that. Okay, so you'll see there that's updated the surface in the background. Now, I do have an implied curve here. So if I click on this line work, I can see the point number connection 1494, 1498, 1497, 1496. So I know the order of those points actually starting down at this end and working up that way. So what I can do is decide to put in a fillet, right? So I can click on this point or this point, and I could say, I'd like to start doing an arc, right? What the software will do is then fillet from that point onwards, and I think I just did it in the wrong order, didn't I? Let's turn that to line. So if I click on this point here, I'm going to start doing arcs. So start doing arcs, I will stop arcing at this point here. So basically you can go in and instruct the line work to behave differently. Okay, that's really what this is letting us do. You click on any point and remove parameters. The way the parameters work is actually up to you. We've got it triggered based on the code having a dot, full stop, and then a letter. You could have a comma or something else if you wanted. You can also change codes in here. So you could click on this and let's say we'll do something crazy and make this SWL40. Once I do that, it then gets joined in and I've caused myself a new problem. All right, so I'll click on that line work, reorder distance to next, click on this point and reconnect again. So we just tour the job here and have a bit of a play with some of the tools. You can see here that there's some lines here that are quite long, and I'd just like to quickly sort of split them out. So doing a split by distance is a quick way to get rid of them. You can set up your own sort of checks, and it says there are one line less than greater than 30 meters, less than 40. There's one line greater than 40, less than 1,000. So if I said get rid of anything greater than 29, you'll see it will get rid of these two segment lines out. I think I might have gotten my distance a bit short there. Let's just go again. I'll just delete that directly. So you can just pick and delete. I do the same thing with this line, right? Split by distance. I'll make that 19. And I'll then, automatically carve out the long lines. That is writing straight back to the drawing for me. If I look at some other classics here, I've got 3 points and there should be 4. So if I click on the line work, so if I click on the points, I could put a parameter on to make a rectangle. I can click on this one, put a parameter on to close the string. So I can work my way through. Let's say I wanted a gate in between these two points. You can actually do a join string where you create a code to bridge gap. So click on that. It says select Kogo point. I'll call this gate 1. And I'll then have a new code in here, right? And that will also drive a survey line out here as well. Okay, so hopefully it gives you a bit of an idea about how this works. Any self-intersect survey line intersection you want to pursue, you can basically turn those on and off with that highlight. There is a crossing break line option, which will then give you a list of all the break lines that cross. And this is about break lines crossing. It's not about just the survey lines. It's about the break lines that make the surface. And that can help you sort of decide how you might want to deal with, getting rid of overlapping information. So not a perfect survey, but you can see the process you go through to tidy that up. All right, so that's really what survey lines do. That's really what civil site design points do in the context of bringing in survey data from which you can then go ahead and knock out your design. Okay, so let's talk about civil points as a documentation tool, output tool. So one of the classic things you might want to do with your COGO points is to create them for set out or create them to put into your design. So what I'm going to do is quickly design something, and it's just going to be a real basic thing. Just going to do a polyline. So what I'm going to do is draw a detention basin here. Makes no sense in the real world, but I'll put it here. So what I'm going to do is make something out of this. I'm just going to turn this into a basin. Okay, so let's call this one basin. I will put a template on it. I will pick an elevation, lower that a bit, and I will create. So I've now created a string. Okay, it could have been a road design, could have been anything that I wanted, from profile string to whatever, curve string, any of the strings. But what I want to do is show sort of how you can use the civil site design points as a form of documentation. So what I'm going to do is to go back in and use point by reference. So create points, I'll just quickly walk through this. You give it a code. You can basically pick any location you want on the plan, but you can also dynamically link to other features, okay? And that's the classic thing I'm going to do with points by reference. But here's me doing something manually, right? So I could just go, this is 83. I basically want to pick this style. I want to pick SO so that it has a CAD point, and I'm just going to drop that here. Okay, so that point has a description. It has a presentation style. If I wanted to, if I used a good description, I could join it together with the survey line manager, right? And then use that to influence the surface. For me to use that in the surface, if you've created the point and you've included the CAD point option, well, that CAD point lives on a layer. So if we go to the surface manager, I can pick that grading surface, and under the point inputs, I can pick that layer, add it, and build. So what I've now done is built my design with a point in play, managing how that all works.
Shane, I've just had a question which I think you've just immediately answered, but one of the parts of that question was around using the line manager to change or swap edges or make changes to the surface itself or the design surface itself.
Yeah.
Really, I think the answer would be along the lines of, well, the line manager is there to manage your break lines for your surface, but in respect of managing break lines for a design surface, I don't think it's really been sort of set up for that, has it?
Well, yes and no. So if I went in here and let's just quickly nub something in. So I do have these, remember I was going to create points with description XD, right? So I'm going to go and say, hey, I want to connect those points. And I won't worry about break line because, as you say, adding a break line is something you do from the survey point. And basically I want to add these later. I'm not going to bother with, well, I won't bother with 2D line work, but I'm going to create 3D line work, and I'm going to pick what layer that goes on. So I'm going to put that on, I don't know, something that's innocuous, exec view, right? Okay, so I've done that. So what I'm going to do now is to create 2 points with description XD, right? So I'm going to go create point. I'm going to give this an elevation of 82.5. I'm going to call it XD. And I'll give it this point style, so it has a CAD point. I'm going to drop that there. And I'm also going to then create another one. And it's XD already. Let's go 81.5. Let's go and create that here. Okay, so I've got sort of 2 points made. It's doing something a bit unusual with natural surface because I didn't pull it out of the point group of natural surface. So I'll just pull it out of here. Exclude anything with code. Code equals star XD star. That's okay, so it's not part of the natural surface. But if I just I should be able to run create survey lines, and it should join them together for me. Let's see if it does it with survey line manager. So I should have in there. What I'm just going to do is cheat. I'm going to delete all survey lines, and then I'll just rerun this tool just to get it to do its business.
I guess the main part of the question is, how much of this can be used with, design surfaces as much as, there's more the survey line manager being part of editing design surfaces.
Well, I guess I'll just talk you through what you do. In the survey line manager, right, when you create design points, they should all connect, right? So we've got XD here. So on the assumption that that connects and does its business, basically from that, you then have 3D line work on a layer, right? Once you have that 3D line work on a layer, you go into the surface manager and you would go to breaklines, and all you would do is you'd call in that layer, and that would then build into the surface.
Thank you.
That would do the process. Just with regards to making points a little bit more dynamic, what you can do, and I think those points should, those points will pull in with that change. Just to finish this off, what I want to do is show you how to reference points to other things. So you see here points by reference. What you can now do is you can basically link point position and elevation to other design elements. Okay, so what I want to do is to go around the perimeter of this and go out 2 meters and basically create points that sit, let's say, 0.5 meter below the center line here. So to do that, I go to set up position, and in here you can basically say, okay, what is the horizontal location? Well, I want the horizontal location to come from, it could be the string code, it could be the alignment. I'm going to get to come from the alignment, and I want to have an offset of 2 meters to the left, -2. You can also set what happens vertically, right? So vertically, I want to pick up the string center line elevation from the basin, and then I want to put -0.5 meters on it. And you'll see this dynamic reference, right? So what I'm doing here is basically saying, let's create some points that sing and dance based on another element. And then here you add change locations. So you can basically pick a spot, add over an interval, or use the sections out of basically the design setup. So what I'm going to do is go change range at interval. Let's not start at 0, but let's do them every, let's say, 10 meters will do. Once I click on apply, then creates a list of them. I go create points, and I now have a collection of design points with their elevation and position relative to the grading string, right? So if we think that through, if I grab the polyline of the grading string and I drag that out, all I need to do is hit update points, right? And those points will go and reposition themselves relative to the design. So if you think about that for set out, it could be used for set out. I've actually put these on a layer that create that point on that the layer there. So if I just go to the surface manager and build again, I'm actually going to build with those points in mind, right? So they become design points, right, that get used in the triangulation of the mesh. Okay, so points can be created as elements used to represent surface data, and just as equally they can be used as elements to enhance your design. And certainly we've been asked over many years about, hey, I just want to put a low point in the car park. And we've always said, hey, you should have a break line for that. But the reality is that you know, having just a low point is just having a low point. You can now introduce those with civil site design points. All right, that's sort of the end of where I wanted to get to, but maybe just to finish, there is a points on grid option. What this will do is to create points comparing one or two surfaces on a grid framework. Look, I did sort of skirt quickly over the, well, you may not feel I went quickly, but I did skirt over the civil points. There's a little bit more to them that you could go to about setting up the blocks yourself, comparing surfaces, adding unique attributes and including those. So maybe we'll do another session at some point on that. But just with points on grid, it's fairly simple. You've got a code, you've got one or two surfaces to use. And basically, if you're going to use two surfaces, what you want to do is use a style that will basically compare those. So there's one here called cut and fill, which essentially takes elevation 1 minus elevation 2. Okay, so I could get a series of points with cut and fill. You then have spacing. Let's go 20 meters and 20 meters. We're going to end up with a cluster of points in a moment, but you pick a bottom left point here, top right point here, and then I go create points. So you'll see here these grid points now represent the elevation difference. And this is classically what you might you know, put out to file. You know, it might be now you go to point groups. You find the one that picks up points that have description of grid, and you may write that out to a table to document somewhere else. Autofile. Okay, hopefully you found that to be a little bit enlightening, but that's really what I wanted to show about civil site design points and the survey line manager.
Shane, I thought it might be worth, because you did use it a fair amount, is just highlighting how you manage those grips and that they are not an exclusive part of what you've shown today, that they're now part of civil site design. And I'm sorry, I'm talking about the surface and string grip that we were.
Yeah. So with the string grip, you'll see that on total model. So the string grip is your opportunity to grab any line element now and get some straight up information about it, right? So this is really documenting the distance along, the crossfall calculation, the offset calculation to the previous point. So you can grab any particular code, any particular line that we draw as a design, and then you can get some documented information, head-up documented information. The other thing is that if you hover over a grip, you can then do something with that grip. So I might create a civil point just on that location, just by clicking right here. These square grips, you can even move those and change the daylighting manually, right? This is me manually editing the way that daylighting works or the better works. You can also come in here and, you know, potentially do other things like apply variation. You know, so edit code geometry, delete the code, open the section data editor. So what we've really done is given you the ability to click and then hover on a grip and take action on that object. Civil points are part of that puzzle. If you hover on that little circle grip, you can edit the Kogo point, which I think I did blasé on the way through. I didn't really talk about the new groups, but you might open up the point group manager from here, or, you know, update all the points. But yeah, grips are available in any of the AutoCAD-based platforms. We are working with Hexagon to see what we can do about a similar functionality in BricsCAD.
Is it worth quickly just showing where you can turn these on and off, just in case if you haven't got 19.2 onwards? I think it's 19.2 when they came out. There you go. Yep.
So what we've done is pop them usually underneath the active drawing settings. Also in the general tab, you'll see the grip settings command. Fairly simple. You choose to show them or not show them, and you can show them as large or small. So for the surface one, for instance, I'll make that small, and then I'll go apply, and it's really just the little, size of that marker.
That's great, thank you. Yeah, certainly if you haven't seen those, I think, did we have them automatically turned on when the release came out? I think most people, if you've got the latest, you'll have noticed them possibly. But if you haven't, then well worth going and having a look, particularly when it comes to just things like running a water drop or running turning the contours on and off or triangles on and off quickly. Just running that process can be really good. So yeah, great. Now, folks, we've got a couple of minutes just for any questions that you might have in relation to what you've seen today. So feel free to pop into the Q&A and fire across any questions. Just while we're waiting, I will just make mention of the fact that this is recorded, so there will be an update on the YouTube channel with this. So if you want to go back and watch what we did today and actually have a go at it yourself, you're more than welcome. And in fact, I do have a couple of polls which I will just run now. It's just really just some feedback. So for those of you that have seen this, really question 2 is based on the fact that you would obviously have to use question 1, but based on what you've seen, are you likely to use civil points in your projects? Based on what you've seen, are you likely to use survey lines in your projects? So getting a few responses there, which is interesting. Any feedback you have on this? So if you do start to tackle it and want to give it a whirl, well worth doing. There is a video on our YouTube channel, I think, where we've actually shown you how to incorporate a civil point back to your design and then use auto profile. So that's one of the most recent YouTube videos working with civil site design. So you can really get into using the civil points with your actual, it could be road designers, or as Shane's done there, basin or car park. So thanks for the feedback on that. Interesting that a good proportion of you are interested in giving a go, and some of you are not sure yet, which I can understand. This may have been an exploratory viewing of a webinar just to sort of get a sense of what it's all about. So I'll just end that polling. Thank you. Shane, have you got anything more to add to that, or?
No, look, the only thing to add is that we're certainly keen to do more with these points. We have found that they're quite fast for large data sets, so we are looking at opportunities to leverage these into string topo in the future.
Fantastic. Well, I'll just share my screen to sign off. We haven't had any other questions come in, which can mean one of two things. So we'll go for the positive twist on that, which is that it was brilliant and there's no questions to ask, Shane. Cool. Well, look, can I just confirm, Shane, you can see my screen?
I can. Yeah.
Fantastic. So yeah, folks, we've got a few webcasts. We're back into the weekly schedule again, as per 2020. So we're running Revit fundamentals. So we've got our application consultant, John Banson, who's going to be running a series over the course of the forthcoming months on Revit. So if you've never used Revit, knew that was going to happen, Revit before, you are more than welcome to join us next week, where we'll be starting to unpack how to operate it. And then following that, we've got Civil Site Design Project Assist, and then as yet to be titled, an AutoCAD webcast, and then another Civil Site Design webcast. And we'll be running different topics and different series over the course of the coming months. As I said earlier, this recording will be on the YouTube channel. And if you want to sign up to get the mailing about the newsletter for the webcasts, feel free to find this particular address here and subscribe, and you can obviously share that with whoever you want to as well. We will be putting these on LinkedIn and posting them regularly if you want to catch up with it there. Thanks very much, Shane. Excellent webcast.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yep.
No problem. And we look forward to seeing as many of you as we can in the forthcoming weeks. Thanks ever so much.